Hello and welcome to another TLDR Brexit Explained video. To say that Brexit is complicated at this point would be so obvious it would be bordering on straight up patronising. We all know that solving the Brexit conundrum hasn't ended up being the easiest job in human history, as some politicians like Liam Fox claimed back in 2016. And even in 2020, it seems that we still don't fully understand what the outcome of the referendum or the Brexit process will be. What's becoming increasingly clear is that the negotiations between the UK and EU aren't going swimmingly, and unlike previous administrations, Johnson's government seems unwilling to delay the process any further, meaning that time is very rapidly running out. So in this video, we'll discuss the latest updates out of the UK and EU's negotiations, whether a deal is even possible at this point, and what would happen if both sides don't reach an agreement on time and the UK leaves without a deal. If you want to be updated on issues like this as soon as they happen, let me recommend the TLDR News Daily Briefing. Weekdays at 5 PM, we release a 4-minute briefing summarising some of the biggest and most interesting stories that you might have missed. You can read it in our daily newsletter or over at tldrnews.co.uk, and you can sign up to the newsletter by clicking the link in the description. Or you can listen to the daily podcast by searching for TLDR News in your podcast app of choice. Before we dive into the status of the negotiations and the prospect of a no deal, it's important to set the stage, lay out the timeline, and explain the context of what's happening at the moment. You might remember that on January 23rd, the House of Commons signed off on the withdrawal agreement, a document which set out how the UK would leave the EU and the process which would follow. Notably, this wasn't any form of deal. It didn't have details about trade or the future relationship. It just set out how the UK would leave. This was then also approved by the EU Parliament, and at 11 PM on January 31st, the UK officially left the EU, a moment which was years in the making, and also feels like years ago by this point. Although the UK has officially ceased being an EU member, they weren't officially separated just yet. That's because during the transition period, the UK would remain close to the EU, allowing businesses and individuals to adapt, and giving both sides a chance to reach an official trade deal. During this transition, the UK has remained a member of the EU Single Market and Customs Union, and while it's lost its voice in the European Parliament, they have to continue following the rules set by the EU. This is all set to conclude at the end of the year, with the UK officially severing all of its old ties to the EU at the end of 2020. This date could have been extended by a year or two, but the deadline to make an extension was the end of June. And, well, if it had have happened, we would have definitely made a video about it. So, there was no deadline change, despite the COVID chaos, and the UK is officially set to leave the EU at the end of the year. So, that leaves us 4.5 months for both sides to reach a deal, right? Another 4.5 months to thrash things out, negotiate hard, and come out with an agreement. Bags of time. Well, I'm afraid to tell you that that's not quite right. That's simply because this is supposed to be a transition period. The whole point of this phase is to give businesses, individuals, and governments time to adapt and change to the new post-Brexit reality. So if the deal was only announced at the end of December, how could its contents be adopted in a matter of days, especially with all of the turkey, work parties, and ball dropping planned at that time of year? So instead, the UK and EU hope to have negotiations concluded a fair bit sooner than that, likely before the October European Council meeting, which is set to take place on the 15th and 16th of October. In fact, they may not even have that long if they truly want to get everything finalised on time, with Michel Barnier clearly stating that this means there's only a few weeks left to finalise negotiations, and according to him, this time should not be wasted. So, time is rapidly running out, and the UK is apparently still keen on reaching an agreement, or at least that's the official line, with Andrew Neil telling Talk Radio that the Prime Minister says he still wants a deal. And this is still the official line of the EU too, so surely both sides are able to compromise and reach an agreement. Well, it's not looking great. The EU's head of relations with the United Kingdom, Michel Barnier, has claimed that there are two main areas of tensions in the negotiations. The first is the role of the European Court of Justice in the UK. Some of you watching this video will be asking why the hell the ECJ would have anything to do with the UK once we've decided to leave. Well, technically they don't have to play any role. But the problem is that if the UK wants to maintain a close trading relationship with the EU, then there needs to be some sort of discussion with the ECJ. The EU has a single market, meaning that goods can cross borders without checks or tariffs. But this only really works because each country has very similar standards on goods, workers, rights, and state aid. And all of these are governed by the EU to prevent individual countries from simply lowering their standards to make their own goods cheaper so that they can undercut other EU businesses. If any EU nation did try to do this, they'd be hauled in front of the European Court of Justice and asked to explain themselves. This doesn't just apply to EU members either. Anyone who wants to freely trade with the EU and gain access to the single market has to reach an agreement on this. If they didn't, then EU partners could simply flood the market with goods that were very, very cheap because they weren't keeping in line with the EU standards or workers' rights guidelines. So, if the UK does want to maintain a close relationship with the EU for trade, then they have to accept at least some ECJ rulings and authority, something that Brexiteers won't like at all. The second big disagreement is around the common fisheries policy. In our last video on talks between the UK and EU in July, we spoke about the common fisheries policy and the debate around it for nearly 7 minutes. As we have a hunch that most of our audience are not also die-hard fishing enthusiasts, we won't cover this again. But if for some reason you do want to learn more about this, we've linked that video in the description. So there are still two major areas of disagreement, and these really are huge issues. The issues of fishing and sovereignty were two of the biggest arguments in 2016. So Johnson's government surely doesn't want to be seen as betraying the Brexiteers who supported them in the general election, especially the northern constituencies that they picked up for the first time. That's not to say that there's no flexibility at all though. The UK's negotiator David Frost has already spoken to Conservative MPs and explained that the UK would have to give away 60% of what it wanted to finalise an agreement. However, it seems that even ministers in the UK are ready to adopt a no-deal Brexit, as Grant Shapps explained in an interview on LBC.
We need to be prepared if there is a no further deal, which we're very prepared to do.
What would you put your money on, Secretary of State?
I would not go for a bet on this, but I can put my money on us being ready. So if we don't have a further deal, then we'll be ready.
I'm sure some of you have already left comments in support of no deal, possibly even arguing that it's what we originally voted for in 2016. I'm not going to comment on whether or not no deal is the best approach at this point, but at the risk of annoying some people, it does bug me when people say that we just voted to leave and that no one wanted these trade talks. People just wanted a no deal. That's because it's simply not true. I'm sure that some people felt this way when voting, but major politicians, the likes of Fox, Gove, Johnson, Hancock and Morgan, all talked about the risks of no deal and assured voters that there would be a new deal with the EU. In fact, writing in the Mail, Gove explicitly remarked, "We didn't vote to leave without a deal. That wasn't the message of the campaign I helped to leave." So it's not true that people voted for a no deal. Huge swaths of Brexit voters believed these politicians when they spoke about easy Brexit deals, and many of these voters simply wanted a new relationship with the EU, not a total divorce. Regardless, at the moment, no deal Brexit is still looking likely. Not quite inevitable, there is still some time left on the timeline, and it seems that with sufficient compromise, a deal could be reached. The question is, with two major stumbling blocks in the way, whether both sides are actually willing to do this. And there are signs across Europe that people are sceptical that a deal can be reached. Last year, the Scottish First Minister commented that Johnson had put Britain on an almost inevitable path to no deal, a sentiment echoed by Germany much more recently. That was when the German BDI industry lobby warned its members that failure of negotiations for a partnership agreement is now as good as inevitable. Too many political and technical issues are still outstanding for them to be resolved in time. In fact, both the UK and EU seem to be preparing for this inevitability. In July, the EU issued new guidance to help citizens, companies and authorities prepare for no deal. And also, the July European Summit agreed on a special Brexit adjustment reserve worth €5 billion to help member states and sectors most affected by Brexit. On the UK side, the government's restarted no-deal preparedness plans, including Operation Brock, the plan to handle lines of lorries at major ports like Dover. So, at least at the moment, it looks like people may be resigning themselves and preparing themselves for no deal. Time certainly is running out, and both sides have precious little time left to reach an agreement if it's going to be implemented by the end of the year. This means that the UK could end up leaving without a deal, or begin trading with the EU under WTO rules, something we've discussed before in numerous other videos. However, if you'd like to see an updated video on this topic, what 2021 could look like without a deal, then like this video and comment down below to let us know. In fact, that's something which is worth noting. Even if the UK doesn't reach a deal, 2021 will still come, and talks between the UK and EU won't immediately cease in their entirety. Even the normally pro-Brexit Telegraph acknowledges that a no deal wouldn't be the end of the line for UK-EU negotiations, noting that as soon as the middle of the decade, the UK is likely to return to Brussels, seeking a closer relationship with the European Union. As the article notes, the UK economy, already struggling with the impact of COVID, would be further encumbered without trade from Europe, due to the impacts of no deal on the vast quantity of trade the UK does with the EU. It's not just trade though, our economy and public services need migration from the EU, meaning that the loss of European workers will have a very real and very immediate effect on the UK. While no deal would allow the UK to strike deals with other nations, only China and the US are comparable sized trading partners. And even there, the proximity of the EU means that trade with China and the US would always be more difficult, more expensive, and more cumbersome than trading with the UK's neighbour. As the Telegraph article puts it, if the UK is to prosper post-Brexit, it will have to accept a close relationship with Brussels. Crashing out now will only delay the inevitable, while causing years of senseless economic anxiety. The full link to that article and all of the other sources from this video can be found in the description. What do you think about the inevitability of no deal? Do you think that it's a foregone conclusion, and is no deal something you'd be happy with? Or do you think that we still have hope that a deal could be reached? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Also be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified whenever we release more videos on this topic. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible. And if you want to see your name listed at the end of the videos just like these people, then be sure to back us on Patreon. There's a link to that in the description.